the most peaceful place in the world, but I don't think it will be for long because of this intense interest on the part of other nations and this nation.
Operation Highjump, led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd, has long been celebrated as the greatest expedition of the age of exploration. Yet for the last surviving soldier of that fateful mission, its legacy is something far darker. He believes it was the most carefully constructed lie of the 20th century. Now, at the age of 99, Robert Johnson has chosen to speak the entire truth. What he reveals is not merely a distorted chapter of history, but the story of a retreat by 4,700 soldiers from an uninhabited continent, and of a lethal secret capable of rewriting everything we think we know about this planet. So what truly defeated the United States Navy in Antarctica? The final testimony is about to begin. The making of a legend. In the chronicles of the United States Navy, the name Richard Evelyn Byrd Jr. stands for far more than a commanding officer. He came to embody the living spirit of humanity's drive to conquer the unknown during the 20th century. Born in 1888 in Virginia into a family steeped in tradition, Byrd seemed destined from the outset for heights that few could imagine. From the moment he put on a naval uniform, every effort of his career was directed toward setting unprecedented records, shaping him into an ideal symbol of courage and leadership. The respect he commanded among his peers was absolute, while the public embraced him as a hero lifted straight from the pages of epic history. His reputation was firmly sealed in 1926, when he announced the completion of the first flight over the Arctic, a stunning achievement that earned him the Congressional Medal of Honor. This triumph was followed by a series of transatlantic flights and daring aerial campaigns over Antarctica, where he became the first to navigate above the harshest frontiers on Earth. 3 grand ticker tape parades in New York were more than ceremonial praise. They marked the moment when Byrd crossed the boundary between explorer and cultural monument. Yet the force driving Byrd reached far beyond public glory. To him, the frozen poles were not lifeless wastelands, but vast blank pages awaiting new historical records. His 1928 expedition to the Ross Ice Shelf and the establishment of the Little America base demonstrated his vision of the continent's immense potential. The true turning point in his understanding came in 1933, when Byrd chose to endure a 5-month solitary mission at the Bowling Advance Weather Station. In total isolation and temperatures far below zero, he narrowly escaped death from carbon monoxide poisoning. It was during this brush with mortality that he appeared to encounter observations that lay beyond the boundaries of conventional physical laws. Internal reports began to note anomalies that contemporary meteorology could not explain. Precision navigation instruments repeatedly produced illogical readings, and the geological features of Antarctica seemed to defy accepted models of plate tectonics. Although none of this information reached the public media, the existence of such anomalous data drew intense interest from senior leadership in Washington. Against this backdrop of growing scientific uncertainty, in 1939, Admiral Byrd held a discreet meeting that would determine the fate of a 19-year-old young man named Robert Johnson. The interview took place at a naval facility in Norfolk, Virginia, and bore little resemblance to standard recruitment procedures. Johnson, a Sea Scout with basic maritime skills, expected technical or physical examinations. Instead, Byrd set aside the entire service record and focused on a single criterion: the ability to maintain absolute secrecy. In the dimly lit room, Byrd was not seeking thrill-seekers hungry for fame. He needed individuals defined by unconditional loyalty and the capacity to follow orders without question. Johnson's composure and instinctive self-control set him apart from the louder volunteers. He believed he was joining a prestigious scientific survey, a rare honor for someone so young. What he did not realize was that he had been absorbed into a high-level security apparatus where the true task was not geographic discovery, but the management of information capable of unsettling global perception. The fact that a celebrated admiral personally selected an inexperienced recruit based on silence rather than professional expertise for a publicly framed scientific expedition was a profound logical contradiction. It signaled that the real objective of the mission lay outside official records from the very beginning. The frozen chessboard. During the 1940s, while public awareness of Antarctica extended little further than a vast white void on the world map inhabited by cold-resistant wildlife and relentless polar winds, military strategists viewed the continent as an untapped geopolitical focal point. Preliminary surveys suggested the possible presence of immense mineral reserves beneath the permanent ice, including coal, oil, and uranium, energy resources capable of reshaping global power in the emerging nuclear age. When Robert Johnson arrived alongside Admiral Byrd, he quickly understood that Antarctica was not a natural laboratory, but a quietly contested territory where establishing a permanent base meant claiming control over the future. Although the media circulated images of cheerful sailors posing with penguins to reinforce the image of a peaceful expedition, the reality on the ground reflected preparation for conflict. Operations went far beyond meteorological measurement. Military units conducted reconnaissance of potential sites for strategic airstrips and marked coordinates rich in resources. At the same time, the physical environment began to display traits that challenged standard principles of navigation. Magnetic compasses spun without direction, and radio signals vanished into unexplained static disturbances before returning to normal without warning. The strangeness extended beyond electronic equipment and manifested directly in the frozen landscape. Johnson and his companions reported that in certain areas, the ice did not reflect sunlight according to known optical behavior. Instead, it seemed to emit a faint internal glow from below, producing a pearlescent shimmer. The southern aurora also appeared with unusual frequency and an ordered pattern of motion, holding its form far longer than natural plasma decay would allow. Even seasoned servicemen felt a deep unease, as though they were being observed by an unseen intelligence. Admiral Byrd rarely commented publicly on such phenomena, yet he showed heightened vigilance whenever reports of geological anomalies reached him. One of the most disturbing observations Johnson witnessed firsthand involved a massive fissure in the ice. Instead of biting cold, a steady stream of warm air surged upward, accompanied by low-frequency vibrations resembling the operation of heavy industrial machinery echoing from an indeterminate depth. The immediate classification of all data related to this geothermal heat and mechanical vibration, and its transmission to Washington rather than release as a scientific discovery, made one thing clear. Military leadership did not regard this as a random natural occurrence, but as evidence of a structure or organized activity beyond the explanatory reach of traditional geology. Operation Highjump. The winter of 1946 marked the beginning of Operation Highjump, a military undertaking publicly described by the United States as a training exercise designed to test equipment under extreme cold conditions. Yet the true scale of the force involved told a very different story. 14 warships were deployed, including an aircraft carrier and multiple destroyers, supported by 33 specialized aircraft and more than 4,700 heavily armed personnel. Such a concentration of offensive capability was wholly disproportionate to any purely scientific objective. Sending an invasion-level force to an uninhabited continent strongly suggested that the real purpose of the operation was to confront a specific and tangible threat, one believed to possess the capacity for military response. From the moment the fleet entered Antarctic waters, an atmosphere of rigid discipline and heightened combat readiness settled over the crews. Robert Johnson, now a core member of Byrd's inner team, observed that the mission operated on two clearly separated levels. One consisted of publicly acknowledged mapping and survey work. The other involved covert reconnaissance flights, absent from official daily flight logs. Rumors began to circulate of surviving Nazi elements or hidden bases concealed within geothermal oases. These whispers gained strength as aircraft routinely departed toward undefined coordinates and returned with flight crews bound by absolute silence. Tension reached its peak when Johnson's unit was ordered to support a ground team advancing into a mountainous zone labeled as unstable. In this area, snow did not melt randomly, but formed deliberate patterns, implying the presence of an artificial heat source operating beneath the surface. A forward reconnaissance team entered the zone and never returned. The official report attributed their disappearance to a crevasse collapse caused by severe weather. Johnson knew this explanation was false. The sky that day was clear, with unrestricted visibility. No physical traces were ever found. The area was immediately sealed off under strict security, without any credible explanation. Operation Highjump ended abruptly and inexplicably after only 8 weeks, despite original plans for a mission lasting 6 to 8 months. The justification given was extreme weather, a claim that directly contradicted the reality that February falls in the heart of the Antarctic summer, the most favorable period for sustained operations. The fact that a powerful naval force designed to endure full-scale warfare was compelled to withdraw from a region with no opposing army implied something far more troubling. Whatever they encountered possessed capabilities so overwhelming that modern United States military assets were rendered effectively useless. The 3 missing hours. Within the archival records of Operation Highjump lies a controversial gap that has troubled military historians for decades. It is not a random loss of data spanning days, but a precise interval lasting exactly 3 hours. During this period, Admiral Richard E. Byrd vanished entirely from radio communications and positional tracking. The official flight log for that day records a normal takeoff and landing. Between these points lies complete silence, as if the aircraft had entered a zone that did not exist on any physical map. Years after the event, a document believed to be Byrd's private diary began to surface, offering an explanation that challenged all conventional understanding of climatology. In these writings, the admiral described his aircraft crossing an atmospheric boundary and entering a verdant valley deep within the Antarctic interior. Where eternal ice should have prevailed, he reported forests, rivers, and temperatures above freezing, conditions capable of sustaining animal life resembling prehistoric mammoths. Navigation instruments such as gyroscopes and magnetic compasses either failed entirely or produced chaotic readings, suggesting that the local magnetic field had been artificially altered or profoundly distorted. The most extraordinary element of the account was the description of a radiant city, its architecture crystalline and luminous, accompanied by the appearance of disc-shaped flying craft. These objects moved with speed and maneuverability far beyond the propeller-driven aircraft of the 1940s, and bore unfamiliar geometric symbols. According to the narrative, Byrd was intercepted and escorted by an entity identifying itself as the Master, who issued a grave warning regarding humanity's use of nuclear weapons following Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The message was unambiguous. Earth's civilization must abandon its path of self-destruction or face intervention from a force possessing vastly superior technology. Although mainstream academia dismisses the diary as a work of imagination, the testimony of Robert Johnson offers a disturbing form of indirect corroboration. Johnson confirmed that on that very day, Byrd returned from his solitary flight in a state of severe psychological shock, entirely unlike his usual composed demeanor. Immediately afterward, Johnson was reassigned to a special security unit tasked with establishing a restricted perimeter around a stretch of ice that showed no distinctive geographic features on any map. The decision by the United States Navy to guard an invisible emptiness immediately after its highest commander returned in visible distress is a military reaction without rational basis, unless that location truly concealed an entrance or a physical reality that Byrd had witnessed firsthand but was forbidden to record in official reports. The mission within the mission. Not long after Admiral Byrd's 3-hour disappearance, normal command procedures were quietly abandoned. Robert Johnson received a direct order from a senior officer that bypassed all written channels and archival records, instructing him to join a rapid response unit of fewer than 20 men. The deployment coordinates lay deep within the continental interior, far removed from the coastal activity around Little America. As the team approached the site from the air, Johnson noticed an abrupt transformation in the terrain. A vast expanse of ice no longer reflected the clean white light of snow. Instead, it carried a dull gray tone, evoking the surface of oxidized metal rather than crystalline water. The moment they set foot on the ground, the soldiers' senses registered immediate physical anomalies. Ambient temperatures were noticeably warmer than the surrounding region, and the air vibrated with a steady, low-frequency hum. This was not the sound of wind, but a form of mechanical resonance transmitted through the ground itself. The source was a narrow yet profoundly deep fissure in the ice. What made it unsettling was its structure. The edges were perfectly flat, smooth, and straight, as if cut by a colossal precision tool rather than shaped by natural tectonic stress. The walls of the fissure led downward into a tunnel system with curved surfaces composed of a sleek material that was neither stone nor ice, suggesting an advanced level of engineering. Although the standing order was observation only, one officer chose to descend using a safety cable. A prolonged silence enveloped the support team above until the cable suddenly went slack. When it was hauled back up, the line was empty. The officer had vanished without any distress signal or sign of struggle. To confirm what had happened, a second soldier was sent down. This time he was retrieved successfully, but his condition was catastrophic. His body was completely immobile, his eyes wide open and fixed on nothing, with no response to external stimuli. He entered a permanent vegetative state without a single visible physical injury. Command responded by ordering an immediate withdrawal, abandoning all procedures for sample collection or rescue of the missing man. The fact that a fully equipped military unit was forced to retreat from a hole in the ice without firing a single shot indicated that the threat below was neither biological nor military in any conventional sense. It was an influence capable of destroying human cognition instantly upon direct exposure. The missing files and the manufactured silence. The abrupt termination of Operation Highjump in February 1947 was not merely a tactical withdrawal. It marked the beginning of one of the largest information purges in modern military history. As soon as the ships returned to port, a strict censorship mechanism was activated. Ship logs, reconnaissance reports, and aerial film footage were confiscated under the justification of security reclassification. Documents that should have been transferred to the National Archives vanished entirely from the record circulation system, leaving behind an irreparable historical void. Upon returning to his unit, Robert Johnson witnessed a complete shift in atmosphere. Open discussion of anomalous phenomena was forbidden, and personnel rosters connected to special missions were altered, removing the names of soldiers who had disappeared or been placed under medical isolation. The official explanation for the early termination, severe weather, collapsed under basic meteorological facts, as recorded conditions during that period were entirely favorable for flight operations. This contradiction was not an administrative error. It was a deliberate effort to conceal the true reason a heavily armed fleet had been forced to flee. In a rare moment that slipped past the censorship net, Admiral Byrd delivered a startling statement during an interview in Santiago de Chile before being permanently silenced. He warned of a new military reality in which the United States could face an adversary capable of flying from one pole to the other at astonishing speed. Rather than being examined as a strategic assessment, the remark was quickly buried by the media. After that incident, Byrd never addressed the subject publicly again, and soldiers like Johnson understood that his silence was the result of overwhelming political pressure. Johnson himself had briefly seen reconnaissance photographs before they were seized. These images revealed massive artificial geometric structures emerging from the ice, including vertical formations resembling gateways carved into dark rock faces. The photographs confirmed the presence of large-scale engineered construction, rather than hallucination. The culmination of this concealment effort was the signing of the Antarctic Treaty in 1959. Celebrated as a symbol of peace and science, the document effectively banned all military activity and independent resource exploitation, transforming the continent into a legally enforced exclusion zone. That all rival powers of the Cold War, willing to annihilate one another over small territories in Europe or Asia, reached unanimous agreement not to contest Antarctica, represents a geopolitical anomaly beyond the reach of ordinary diplomacy. Such consensus could only emerge if all parties recognized a shared danger, a presence in Antarctica greater than their ideological conflicts. The treaty was not created to protect the environment. It was designed to establish a permanent quarantine around something humanity was not yet capable of controlling. The last man to speak. At the age of 99, Robert Johnson sat before a camera, no longer bound by military duty or fear of reprisal. He was the final living witness of Operation Highjump, and his testimony in the final hours of his life carried not the tone of fantasy, but the weight of concrete physical detail. He spoke not of vague theories, but of events that had haunted his conscience for nearly 8 decades. He revealed that the United States military carried out a bombing operation to destroy the area containing the artificial fissure only days after its discovery, disguised as an explosives test. The immediate destruction of evidence rather than its study confirmed that the priority of his superiors was to bury the truth beneath shattered ice forever. The memory that troubled Johnson most, however, was his final guard assignment at a location disguised as an old weather station. There he found no tents or meteorological instruments, but a structure that could not exist within the known history of human architecture. A reinforced concrete staircase descended deep into the heart of a glacier. Each step was precisely cast, smooth and uniform, entirely unlike the rough marks of manual carving. The presence of concrete, a modern construction material, at a site untouched by human footsteps before the 20th century, shattered every argument about primitive ancient cultures or natural formations. The situation turned horrifying when an officer attempted to descend the staircase to document it and vanished the following day under the procedure of emergency discharge, never to be named in any record again. Johnson's final words centered on his last brief encounter with Admiral Byrd inside the command tent. The legendary admiral, a man who had never retreated from storms or enemies, trembled as he gripped Johnson's shoulders and whispered, "You know what we have seen. Never forget it, because they will try to make the world forget." This was not the instruction of a superior officer, but the plea of a man who had grasped humanity's smallness in the face of what lay hidden. Johnson's conclusion offered no answers about extraterrestrials or supernatural forces. Instead, it rested on a colder and far more unsettling reality. Earth does not belong entirely to us. The concrete structures, the seamless tunnels, and the superior flight technology were not products of imagination. They were physical evidence of a highly advanced technical civilization that had been present in Antarctica long before humans drew their first maps. We did not discover an empty land. We unknowingly stepped into the backyard of a silent owner, and the silence that has endured for 80 years is not peace. It is humanity holding its breath before something it knows it cannot defeat.